Hello guys and welcome to a new episode of Dissenter Talks. I am Ciro and today I have with me a guest. You can go and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm originated from Latvia. I moved here in Poland already 3 years ago, but before was in Denmark and as well lived in Germany for a while. Studied business but transitioned on my own as self-taught developer.
I want to talk to you a little bit about how you managed to get into development, especially since you've come from the business side of things. What was your path like? How did you get started in tech?
Business-related studies never actually I appreciate it, and I prefer more on the backside, not as much indulging with clients directly. I think it's quite difficult to actually start doing it because there are a lot of courses online, and actually I've been into this rabbit hole where I always just go through the next course. But when it changed, when I started actually doing my own projects and as well blogging and recently as well some YouTube and so on.
I was also self-taught as much as you can be self-taught. I really have to thank all the people that posted information about how to do this stuff on the internet, like all the videos, all the courses. As much as sometimes you can get stuck in that rabbit hole, I still really appreciate that people took the time to do that for us. Was there a specific language that you started with, or did you try a bunch of stuff out before settling?
I tried a few stuff. My friend recommended me Java. I hated it. Basically, it's horrific public static void main args. It's just And then with Python it was a lot better, and then slowly transitioned into JavaScript, and then now as well Golang. So
it seems like you are able to learn things pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I personally went through kind of the same rabbit hole. I started with Ruby, and then from there on I went into JavaScript and now TypeScript. I also do some Solidity, but I feel like most people they have a hard time switching after they get started. Like somebody starts learning, let's say Ruby, and then after 6 months, even though it might not be working for them or there's not enough work available for that code, people have a hard time switching. Was that an issue for you in the past, switching around a lot?
Between different languages?
Yes.
Initially, yes. But I think once the core concepts were more understand, then it wasn't as complicated. I'm more an advocate, learning-wise, through the additional methods like books. Mm-hmm. I have 5 books actually, regarding different subjects like JS, Python, Go, Docker, and Kubernetes, right? I found something really great about it because it has so much depth. When I go through Udemy course, things work, but it doesn't have the same kind of depth. And when I check a code from a book, it's amazing, basically.
The way I started is there was this boot camp course.
Mm-hmm.
It's free. It was online, and you read through everything, and then at the end of each module, you have to build something, and they just tell you what to build, but they don't actually show you the process of them building it, in the video courses, where you see them when you copy their code and you write the same code. And I found that to be a very good way of learning, because hand-holding, I feel, takes away the student's ability to actually immerse themselves in the subject and learn for themselves. I always advocate for people to learn by doing more than by actually watching other people do things. It didn't work for me, at least. Everybody's different. So what is it about books? I know you said that it's immersion, it's much more detailed. But to expand on that, what about books makes you attracted to that style of learning?
It's more of a traditional sense, and I think nowadays people have tendency just to consume everything online, and I think for most people when you have I don't know Reddit, React documentation or some other one, I find it difficult to imagine people go through all of it. But when you have a physical book, I think you're more forced to go through it, and it has, I don't know, some nuances that I didn't find online.
It's there's a clear beginning, a clear end, and you know how long it's going to take you. A lot of the times when I read documentation, Especially in the JavaScript world, things get they become obsolete very fast. So somebody writes their documentation 6 months later, none of it applies anymore. And if you follow with the documentation, you usually get stuck and scratch your head as to why it's not working. This is especially an issue with Google. A lot of their services, they have horrible documentation, and they have 10 different versions, and it's really hard to know exactly what you're working with. So books are definitely a good way. One of my favorite books was Clean Code by Robert.
Robert, yeah.
Yeah, have you read it?
I have read it. Yeah.
It's a really good book.
It's a really good book.
Really good.
Even
book.
if it's Java, it's still really good.
It's a really good book because it shows you beyond the syntax of the language. It explains to you the core concepts, and that's really important. How long was your journey? How many months or years did it take from you to go from your business work to working as a developer?
I would say roughly 4 years, but it was in and off. So, and I think nowadays people have bad perception about learning 3 months and then I'm a developer. I got even recently on LinkedIn a connection request, and then the person was sending these shares that look, take this course and you're gonna be a front-end developer in 3 months.
And that's not possible.
That's not possible.
No. You could probably learn how to make WordPress websites or those no-code tools.
Yeah.
It's still a skill, and it's a very good skill to have, and it works for 90% of projects that clients will approach you for if you are a freelancer. But to actually be a developer and work on a real-life project, you have to master the language, in my opinion. Otherwise,
it takes years, right?
It takes years, yeah. I didn't I've started working as a developer, a freelance developer, about a year into my learning process. But I would be lying if I said I was a good developer. I probably wasted a lot of people's money. A lot of clients, I probably made a lot of clients unhappy because I just didn't have what was necessary. It's a much more involved process. How did you end up finding your first job? How long did that take?
It took around 2 years.
What was your first job?
It was semi technical. There was JavaScript involved, but it's more on service based. And talking with clients and setting up some front end and so on, and Google Ads and related things, right? So it was some implementation, but not as much technical. Well, with the German, of course. So.
What were some practices that you have taken during that time, the 4 years that you were learning? What worked for you and what didn't? What made you advance faster?
What didn't work is the idea is that you can learn something fast, or just follow Udemy course and you're just gonna be a full stack developer, right? That didn't work. What worked actually is just learning something and then finding something that piques my interest and then writing a project around it. And nowadays everybody is okay, what should I build? I should build a tattoo app. I'm okay, you can kinda, but why not alter it a little bit, right? I built a password storage, right? It's a little bit altered, right? Or you can I don't know, some kind of book storage with some kind of filters, right?
The password storage is not a bad idea because I use I probably shouldn't say this information online, but I use Firefox's built-in password manager, and one time the browser updated and it overwrote my master password. So everything was encrypted, and the only way I got out of it is because I saved a backup at some point, and I was able to restore the passwords. But I looked at it for 2 days. I was panicking because it was 357 logins. I still remember the number. 357 randomized logins that I had saved on my browser, and I wasn't able to use it. And that's all my work. That's all my life's work. All my bank accounts. Everything is bricked. So that's a really good project. What inspired you to start doing this kind of work or to transition in the first place?
The business realm, for me, particularly with the sales and marketing, wasn't as I know, challenging. And I like when it just sit down and you always be something creative. I now live with another person, right? And doing like in financial sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, how is it work-wise? And he's like, yeah, same old, right? But I think in development, if you're working what you like, then it can be quite immersive. Like it's definitely a headache, and you have like people you don't click with, but you know.
Yeah, I will refrain from commenting on that. You definitely have to learn how to talk to people. I feel in this job, a lot of developers start off thinking like, oh, I could just go in my corner and code along, and I'm making big money, and that's how things work. It isn't.
No.
You have to talk to people all day. You have to be in meetings, and it's quite a difficult process.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to talk to people at your job now? Because I know you're working as a full-time developer, right?
Yeah. Now I have to talk. Usually it's in the morning. It's really great. I love my job a lot. It's just some people are a little bit more stubborn. You know, with I don't know, even on the backend side, really hate NoSQL database. I'm like, what's the problem with that, right? Mm-hmm. It's like just Postgres, and like, you know, as well hating like JavaScript as much, right? Because the front end is written in Go, and I'm like, and you have this in, I think in Python as well, in Rust as well. You have this component based, but it was painful a little bit.
Sometimes I wish I could make decisions for the whole team, but it's not always possible. Although I really do love my job, and it's very fulfilling, and I actually like love the people that I work with, despite sometimes being frustrated. Do you have any ways of usually dealing with these kinds of things when you're talking to, let's say, a manager or a boss or a coworker? When it's difficult, like would you have any advice for that?
I think it a lot depends on company culture, how people are open, and if they're I think in tech sector for some reason, at least my experience, a lot of people have like quite huge ego, and that like think, no, I'm right, you know, this is the best decision, or like just React, or just I know Python and so on. I'm like, okay, you have other options, just check how it is. And I think it's like company culture plays a huge role, and as well how much you worked somewhere. I think that gives credibility as well.
I see what you're saying. I would like to figure out a way in the future to help maybe change company cultures, because I've worked with a lot of DAOs in my space, in the blockchain space. And you're right, it really is dependent on the company itself. Sometimes people are just like, they don't care, everything is open, you just push your code and you're good. Sometimes you have these very arduous, very like specific processes that you have to follow, and people are very picky. And they all really create different environments, sometimes for the better or worse. Do you ever think of going off and building your own project in the future? Is that something you want to do?
Something I've been interested in, but I'm not actually as convinced now it should be completely in tech sector. I would like to have like a little bit of a transition, maybe a little bit more into health and so on, because I think nowadays that is quite destroyed. I met actually one person who as well works in a ad agency something, and he says he hates his job because his sole purpose is to brainwash children into buying their product, right? And I think it's nowadays quite common, sadly.
I was having this conversation in yesterday's podcast. Ads, we can zoom out and talk about tech in general. There's a lot of space to hurt people. Your decisions, they might look insignificant in terms of what you add into your code and how you make things work, but every decision you make affects people. When somebody watches an ad that you introduce through Google AdSense, you are actually involved in the brainwashing. And by one of the goals of all tech people is to get people to use their products. And to do that, we usually follow this practice of how do I say this in a not like nasty way, but like getting people addicted to the application, making the application very like appealing, and getting people to constantly use it as much as possible. So I see your point. Where in tech, where in health do you want to focus, and what's your thoughts around that?
I would say like mental health, it's quite essential. I would like to introduce even maybe a website, I know, like where people could just gather and go in the forest for a few days. Or I know something, because one of my friends does that, and I think it's like quite underappreciated, right? Like, because simple things can fulfill us, and because like when I always sit behind computer like non-stop, I feel like agitated, and it's like too much, and then I don't know if I'm actually thinking, or it's like subconsciously I'm being fed certain information to act accordingly. So
I totally understand that. We moved away from real world applications that like take you outside of the house.
yeah.
I see more and more apps are built around keeping you on your phone or on your computer. I would like to see us move towards this direction where we would use this internet and use these tools to get people outside, get people sitting together, get people into nature. Do you have any applications at the moment that you use for these kinds of things?
Applications, not really, because I already like use YouTube and other medias, and like code and stuff. So I would say like mainly sports, or just outside something, or doing some handiworks. Like a while ago, I actually went chopping wood, and that was so amazing.
Well,
like simple things. So
I have a bunch of wood in the garage, and I love doing that on the weekends, like chopping wood, putting in the fireplace. Depends if it's legal. Sometimes it's not legal here in Poland. You have to check the what's it called, the pollution index. Like there's a pollution index. If it's above a certain point, you're not allowed to burn wood in your fireplace. But yeah, there's something really appealing about disconnecting and taking time away.
But I think as like developers don't like, at least people who start don't understand how much it actually as well improves your code. I think because people are like, okay, I'm stuck in a issue, or I don't know, some kind of traceback, and I'm just keep I don't know, hitting my head against the wall, and it gets getting worse. I cannot imagine like times I just stepped outside, went for a walk, I came back, and I instantly solved it.
I've had this experience a lot with sleep specifically, and I think that's more because I am not like really good with sleep. I don't like sleeping too much. I like 6 hours, 7 hours. But when I get a good night's sleep after I'm stuck on something, I wake up with the solution. Did I dream the solution? Did it just like compile in my head? I don't know, but I've had this experience a lot where I get really stuck, I go to sleep, I wake up, it's like a 5-minute fix, and it's magic. We do need to talk about that more, because I know one of your main interests is in creating this balance between tech and non-tech, and helping improve both your life and people around you. Where did this stem from? Like, where did this come from? Is this a new thing in your life, or have you always been interested in this balance?
I've been more interested as of late, because I made like relatively like not smart investments, right? A lot on emotions, impulses. I don't know if it's just me, but I think it's quite common nowadays for people if you always just consume. But when I like step aside and do something else, and I feel more relaxed and can think rationally. But it just came out of experience when I finally decided, okay, I just have to step aside for a few days, and then, okay, this feels relatively going in the good direction. But obviously in tech sector you can earn, so the balance is quite a, I think, difficult task.
It is. The more I work, the more I make. It's not like a typical 9-to-5 job where I go work, whatever I do is inconsequential. I always make the same amount. It's not how it works in my field. Like, I have a full-time job, and then I have time to work on other projects that I've been associated with, and I can earn. And that's a very hard balance to strike, because then every time I'm taking time off, it's like I'm earning less money. And I struggle with that personally.
But you as well have then drawbacks. If you always like work, obviously you get more money, but the health as well, like, is you cannot buy it with money often, no?
Yeah, you can't buy it with money.
But of course you cannot be lazy. It's just I know the balance is quite difficult.
I think the way I look at it is that right now I'm young, and so I can drive myself up a wall up until I can't do that anymore, and then eventually I'll take that time off. But I also don't think that's a realistic way to deal with the problem, because we don't know how much time we have. We could have like 50 years, or maybe we could have 20 years. We don't know. So getting that balance right is very important. What are some things that you do that help you achieve that balance outside of tech?
As I said, like sports, running, I do squash, indoor climbing, reading, going just outside, and cooking. Like, so I think it depends on people as well. Like playing some chess or like some board games time to time. It's like more on the down to earth side of life. And I don't know, I just feel like more pleased, right? That like I think rationally.
So, essentially, taking these activities that are outside of your house or away at least from the computer, they help you like reset yourself, and you work better, your emotions are better, and you act more consciously and less with your emotions.
I actually read a really great book when I was in Dubai. I found it, like it's Carl Newport, Digital Minimalism. I highly recommend it. And he's actually a software developer as well, right? He's not like just an average Joe, and he's like implying about minimalism, right? And what he said, like nowadays people don't know how to be in solitude.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
But like, for example, I have my issues, right? And I don't know how to address it. What do? I just go to YouTube. I go to Facebook. I do something, right? But like, sometimes, I don't know, you have problems, you go outside, you just face it, accept it, and then you can have like somewhat rational idea of it. But he said like nowadays people don't do solitude. When I go to metro, I actually see old people actually living, to be honest. I see them looking outside and just being present in the moment. All youngsters are just like glued on their phone. Same as well, I'm quite often glued, but I see the beauty behind it after I read the book, partially.
This movement of digital minimalism seems to be something common between developers. I've known a lot of developers that absolutely despise tech. They just want to be away from it. They don't want to spend. They have like a friend of mine from the UK. He walks around with an iPhone 5 that you can't install apps anymore because the App Store isn't supported. So he only has like 2 or 3 cracked apps on his phone that he uses for communication. There's this person that comes to the meetup that we're a part of. What was her name? Sophia. She also doesn't have a phone, doesn't have a laptop, just completely disconnected from tech when she's outside. And when I had a conversation with her, I'm like, well, how do you get around, right? Like, you need the Maps app? So like, how do you find where you're supposed to go? They're like, no, you use your brain, and that doesn't click to me. Nowadays, it's like, do I want to waste 20 minutes trying to find something, or do I just want to have the instant solution? I think that's the case for everybody now, and part of that is being bored, being bored and sitting alone. It's a part of the human condition, but in this day and age, it's intolerable, right? People have an instant solution, instant entertainment and connection and conversation, and they take the easy path.
Doesn't it like make people partially handicapped?
I think it does, but it also like it's a trade-off between one, the way I view my computers is as if we think about the brain, right? It's like the fourth part of the brain for me. That's how I think about it. It's like my fourth part of the brain. You have the root, you have the middle, you have the front section, and then you have your phone or your computer. It allows you to do way more things. It allows you to communicate. It allows you to create, but it also handicaps you, because if you lose that, it's like losing a part of your brain. How are you going to function if there's no more electricity in the world? There's no more Wi-Fi. Is it something you're going to be able to handle? I think for most people, I don't think it's possible. I think people would rather like go to war. They would rather fucking nuke things before taking a minute and like going back to living without that fourth part of your brain. How do you feel about that? It's kind of doomer, I know.
No, like I agree with that. And yeah, but stepping outside, it's definitely it's a must, would say. I don't know if like even there's I don't know, little bit maybe off topic. What I don't like if you heard Apple 14, like iPhone 14, what that happened with data blockage, right? This and now like huge companies as well, like they're losing, right?
Like blocking the data reading from your phone. Is that what you're talking about? Like Apple phones stop companies or apps from reading your information. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think like interesting because nowadays a lot of people are into getting like being influencers. Like IG, you have YouTube and so on, but that's like cuts down a lot, doesn't it?
I think it
profit
wise, I think we do need to move away from the ad model, because all of these platforms, their first method of like paying their creators or influencers is ads, right?
Yeah.
But the issue with ads is that your view only counts as like 1,000th of a cent. So you need to watch 1,000 videos before you even give that creator 1 cent, right? And what is the trade-off here is that you allow ads on your platform, and ads are propaganda machines. Doesn't matter what country you're in, ads are propaganda. They are meant to make you do things. Even if you don't buy immediately, it's meant to like drive the product into your head and remember it with the songs and the catchy lights and all that stuff. So I think that as an economy, like the online economy needs to shift over to direct payments and cut out the ads and cut out the middleman like YouTube and cut out Twitch. I don't know if people here are aware, Twitch only gives you 50% of what you earn. So I can...
If somebody donated even?
Yes. So if I want to donate to you, you're a creator.
Yeah.
First, I need to buy this fake token. It's called bits. Yeah. I need to buy them, and I need to buy them at a 5% increase, right? Okay. So instead of paying 100%, I have to pay 105%. And now I have 100% of these bits that I want to donate. So by the time they get to you, 50% of those are taken by Twitch as well. So they made 55% and you made 50%. Now think about taxes, think about transaction fees, and you're down to like 30% of what you're getting from this like donations. Why is this important? It's important because if we don't change the way we do ads and the way we do social media and applications, we are driving ourselves into a very bad situation, I think. Do you use ad blocker?
Yes, on my computer.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
There's something called sponsor block. Have you heard of it?
No.
So now, like you watch a YouTube video, it's 20 minutes. Like 2 minutes of it is usually shilling. Yeah. They're shilling something. So there's this application called Sponsor Block. You can install it as a plugin. And every time you come to a video and you find a sponsorship, you can report it. And then the next person that watches the video with the sponsor block enabled, they don't have to watch that anymore because it gets cut out.
Nice.
It auto skips to the end of the shilling session. I love those apps, but Chromium is now disabling that. Have you heard of this?
No, not.
They're moving to something called it's called Manifest V3. It's like version 3 of their browser. Now you are not able to install browser plugins that are not verified by Google. All the ad blockers, all the sponsor blockers, all the tracking blockers that you could install in the past are now not available anymore. So to go back to balance though, what do you think are some of the consequences of giving up control of our information and our time and attention to this tech space?
What's the consequences, you mean? Of giving away like too much?
Yeah. Okay. Too much, yeah, and accepting these kinds of things that we just discussed.
Well, from my own experience, it leads to not rational behavior. It's more on the, I don't know, monkey mind in a way.
Yeah.
It's impulse. It's like, I don't know, I just feel like being partially, everything that stimulates me, I'm going for it. Like, I don't know, even like I did with NFTs, in back of my head I knew, okay, that's maybe not rational, right? But okay, that's stimulating, right? I can see something new, but it doesn't. It just, I'm on the L in that sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it as well goes into more personal life, because then I lose like connection with family and knowing what their problem is and so on. I think it's quite a lot you can lose if you let yourself be immersed in too much and not having the so-called balance.
And what do you think we have to gain from trying to bring back some order to this whole thing? Like taking some time away from the computers, taking some time away from the phones, maybe leaving the house once in a while without taking your phone with you. What do we have to gain? One thing that I've noticed is immersion. Once in a while, on Sundays, I turn off my phone and I leave it at home, and I leave the house. I take my partner, I go to the zoo, I go on a walk. I'm much more immersed. When I have my phone with me, every 30 minutes I pick it up, I check the notifications. Oh, I got a text, I got to reply to it.
Overstimulated now? Overstimulated as well?
I like being overstimulated, which is the problem. It's like it's where I feel the most comfortable.
Yeah, but it doesn't like overstimulation as well. It doesn't lead to like rational solutions or approaches in life.
I think it's like two-sided. In one sense, when you're overstimulated, the time that you're putting into this stuff, it will bring you something, right? Like it'll bring you connections, it'll bring you work connections, it'll improve your status, it'll get you more followers, maybe make you more money. So on one side there are benefits.
What about investment, like crypto stocks with high stimulant?
I'm a degenerate with Dogecoin. Every time I see Dogecoin going up, I throw money into it. It's like, it's so fun, and then I watch it all day and I'm like tweeting about it, and so yeah, it does lead to some irrational behavior. Yeah, don't buy Dogecoin, please. It's a bad idea. What do you think are some applications that take what we talked about, like all of this stuff, that take a good approach? For me, like Meetup app is a great example of an application that is good versus like, I don't see anything bad about Meetup. Like you can find a place to go, you can find friends, you can find something to do. That's a good application.
Definitely. Meetup. Eventbrite is like similar concept.
Eventbrite? I haven't used it. I know that there's like some ticketing, like you could buy tickets there. Yeah.
Some of them are paid, some of them are free. But what else? Like a podcast application, I actually listen.
Podcasts?
Podcasts, yeah.
Yeah, well,
like this one, like
we're making one, right?
Yeah.
I like Spotify too. I think Spotify's pretty good.
Yeah, Spotify.
The music though, do you code with music or without music?
Oh, actually with music.
Oh, what kind of music do you like?
It's like a low beat.
Low beat, okay.
Yeah.
So no lyrics.
No lyrics,
Okay.
Lyrics just.
I've had that experience too. Like it's too distracting.
Yeah, lyrics just tick. I think most people at least tick off a little bit, like when you have lyrics.
Like you lose concentration. For me, like it's splitting my brain in two. One is like listening to the lyrics. One is trying to do work. It doesn't work well.
But as well, I think is crucial in a way. When you code, I don't always succeed, but when I do, I'm really happy. Like code for a while, then just go take like a coffee or tea or something, and then come back because it like refreshes at least to some split second.
How much time do you spend coding in a regular work day?
I think like 5 hours.
5 hours? Yeah, me too. Sometimes I feel guilty, or like, oh man, if people find out, I'll probably not have a good time. But I think that like naturally anything more than that is just not productive. Like everything past 4 hours for me, it just doesn't make a difference. It's like pissing the time away, right? Like or making it worse for myself the next day, where like I introduce bugs or like flaws or issues into the code base because I've been sitting on it all day. Do you feel the same way? Do you have like this guilt about how long you work?
Partially, yeah, especially now at my new job. Feel like I have to do a lot more, but like on my last talks, I was really happy about my like. I'm like, shit, I'm not happy about myself. Like, how does it work?
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like I think it's good like if you're as a developer being critical to yourself as well to some sense, not just like yeah something work is all fine, because I think it as well like stops increasing because what I notice in my job they just make everything work, and there's like a lot of code. I said about dry principle, maybe you should implement it, right? And they're like, oh, okay, whatever.
So, see, I'm on the other side of this. Well, I do like writing clean code, but most of the time I want to see progress, right? So I write code, and it does what it's supposed to do, but it's very situational.
But does it repeat? Or
it really depends, because I do, nowadays, I like to follow dry code as best as I can, so like don't repeat yourself. I try to take that seriously, but at the same time, like it's hard to keep up with that, because that requires like a very high level architectural thinking, where you have to have things like set up in certain files and folders. You have to know where everything is. If you write a function, for example, that does a certain thing, later on you shouldn't write another function that does the same thing, and it's hard to remember like that you already have something that does that, right? Or it might do that but only a little bit differently than the other one, like it does something very very like very small difference. So that's, you're introducing code that isn't necessarily dry there, because it's a very small difference. And I think that in order to write really good dry code, you need some kind of product manager or architecture that makes that possible. Otherwise, you're limiting yourself, right?
But as well, like from my own experience, notice there are levels of learning, because you start off with basics, then you start creating something, it works, and then somebody comes like criticize you, go, okay, you're actually right, and then you start like making it like neat, and then for me next step was like architecture. Okay, I don't know, directory structure doesn't make any sense, right? It should be more split up, or having a helper and so on. That's why like when I start like working officially, then I say, okay, what do they do and what do I do? And like, okay, most of the thing I wrote like works, but it's crap. So in that sense,
it's good not to get attached to your code. I think in the past, like let's say maybe 2 years ago, I was attached to my code. If somebody criticized it, I would get like a little upset, you know, because it feels like an attack on your intellect, right? Because it's a very intellectual job where if somebody tells you you're doing something wrong, it's very hard to like not take that personally. Have you had that experience?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's tough to like accept criticism in a job that mostly relies on intellect.
But I think if you don't accept criticism as well, how can you improve, right? Because like there are new things coming, and if you like stick to your own what you know, and okay, just this one, then somebody else will beat you to it partially, no?
That's definitely true. A lot of the times though, I've seen criticism also come from a place of ignorance, like. And again, this is not an attack on anybody that I've worked with or I know, but sometimes criticism comes from a place of arrogance and ego, right? Like we talked about this earlier. A lot of developers are very egotistical. Again, it's a very intellectual job. This is a common theme. So
maybe I would presume they were not challenged as much. If, for example, a person steps into a company and he has been the head of the company throughout the years, his ego is like bloated, and how could somebody else like you or me like tell, hey, listen, that may be like, what? I've been here for so long, right? And I think that's why when it's can be the case.
So a lot of the problems that we have, I think, can be improved by good communication, listening on both sides, whether it's you listening to your boss or figuring out how to discuss things with your coworkers or with your maybe your competition in an effective way, like learning how to use the right words. Have you taken any time into thinking about this communication issue? Like, is this something that comes up in your life as a developer?
Yes, like my before I like work in Samsung, like a really like well-known company, and there I had like huge communication issues. I just coded. I assumed everything is fine. Something worked. I like sent. I made changes, and then the person responsible me didn't say what's wrong. He just said like one higher up, and the higher up told me, "Hey, listen, you're fired, right? You have 3 months." And like the communication is really essential, and sometimes it's not your fault as a developer. It can be just like company culture is crap. So
how would a regular, grunt developer, let's say, how can they improve culture of their workspace? Is it something that a single developer can do?
I doubt it.
You doubt it? That's bleak. That's tough to.
I think
hear.
you can change maybe a little bit. It depends how far are they. If it's like a mature company, then it's highly unlikely. But maybe if it's like a younger, then it could be like some.
I like to play games with my coworkers, like chess, even if it's just online. We had so I did a couple of contracts with a company called Superfluid, and they had this application that they would use. It's like, have you played the old Pokemon games? Where you have this like little character and you run around. You know what I mean? So you have this little character, you make it, you go in the game, and everybody else is there. Everybody makes their own character. They go in the game, and then you have these blocks on the floor. And if you step on that block, then you're sharing your video and audio, and you're talking like a. It's like they try to replicate like a nice physical work environment through this game. You could play chess with people if you go into certain rooms, and I feel like we need more of that now that we're moving into a more remote style work. Do you do any of that at your company at the moment?
We have just like morning calls, and I really appreciate. Before I didn't have anything. I was just like felt like ghosted.
Like stand-ups?
Yeah, stand-ups.
Yeah. Do you follow the what was it called again? Oh, I've been so disconnected. Stand-ups are like a part of this type of work. I just don't remember what the word was. But how do you find stand-ups? Is it something that improves your work? Because you just said like you appreciate it. What do you like about it?
I think it like connects us more, because before, like when we worked in office, you knew people, and then you like have this connectivity, and I think that one is quite essential to be transparent and actually talk. Right? If you're just like on I don't know, remote, you text somebody, you don't have any relationship with that person. And then it's like, okay, you asked me for, I don't know, a code fix, okay, F it, So
from my perspective, the more time people spend with each other, the better.
Definitely.
And what I've been doing recently is like, instead of just doing my work with my responsibility, I try to string along as many other coworkers as possible to like work with me, because I think that first it improves our bond, right? Like we get to know each other over the code, and second, like it gets more eyes on different parts of the code base, right? So some people that are traditionally back-end developers get to see what you're doing and think about what you're doing, and sometimes you do the same thing on the other side. And I think that trying to get people to work with you or trying to work with other people once in a while is definitely worth it. I think that's my favorite like way to change work culture, because sometimes people don't like doing that. They just like to sit by themselves and do their own work.
And I think like as well about language and everything. Usually I'm familiar with particular language, right, or a framework. Okay, like why should I learn something new? What's the reason? Like when it comes to JavaScript, I stepped into Vue because it was a lot easier compared to React, because like did like Python. And now like okay, like a lot of like hype around React. People are like, React is king. Okay, like I'm gonna swallow my pride and just gonna try it, right? It's okay, right? I still prefer Vue, but like I can understand as well the appeal from React side because it's like JS. What I noticed as well here, like Warsaw JS, I went to Vue and like a lot of people came to me, okay, how do I learn, right? And say like, okay, I'm doing React, and I can see like some people like don't feel as much happy with it. And I'm saying, okay, like if you don't know a lot JavaScript, because what I heard regarding React, you have to know JavaScript relatively well to dwell into it. Nowadays, a lot of people, at least I notice in JavaScript, like front-end side, they just want to take a shortcut and instantly go through. Like I heard Angular is good when you're like from backend. You did like backend, then it's like more applicable, like Angular, right?
Yeah, Angular is designed... so it's like a mono repo. It has everything you need, like login, user management. It's built into the language itself. So instead of having to use third-party services to accomplish things like, like logging in.
But it is like more backendish.
It is more backendish. So it's like a full solution, right?
Yeah.
You have Angular, top, front, back, middleware. It's all Angular. And it's written in TypeScript, so it gives that stability. But with Angular, I think that it's a really good framework if you're doing something that's been done 1,000 times before, right? If you're trying to do something new, React shines because it's very minimalistic. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to do. Like, it gives you so many different options. You could do class-based development. You could do functional development.
Who does class-based?
React.
No, but who does nowadays? Isn't like class-based that or something?
You could say so, but like I'm working on a project right now. We have services, right? Like third-party services that we need in our application. So to make it understandable and easy to access, we take all of those services and we plug them into something called a Willix, which allows us to have like a class-based system of all of our services, where I could just say app.web3.login or app.user.save, so I can attach everything onto this massive object and access it like a JSON object and use it that way. So class-based architecture is still very valid. It's still very useful.
Didn't they remove it from React documentation? I heard like I remember before, like I watched 2 years ago just to dwell into it. It had like class-based. Now it's just like everything is functional based.
They didn't remove it. They abstracted it away. So all of these like new hooks, like use effect, use state, really what's happening under the hood is they're interacting with classes. They just hide it from you, so you don't have to see it. Because I think the flaw with class-based development is that there's so much that you have to read. But with functional development, it's like one and done. You have your one line and it does what it needs to do. But with classes, you used to have to set up a structure and you have to set up an initializer, and then the initializer needs to set up the state, and then the state has to have all these functions attached to it, and then you need to do this dot state dot, like there's so much like code that you have to remember. But that's helpful if you're interacting with so many third-party services that you just want to be able to access them all in one place instead of having to like check each API, right? So it's like there's a lot of trade-offs.
How do you feel about other like frameworks, libraries in general?
I like Svelte. So there's Svelte Kit. I think that separating...
Did you try it? Or?
Yeah, I did. I tried it.
Like it?
I loved it because it's like everything is separate, right? You have your HTML, you have your CSS, you have your JavaScript. It's not an abomination. When I look at React, it's like an abomination.
Well, like Svelte implements same architecture like Vue. It's just like a little bit more concise. It's like even more simple than Vue.
Yes.
So to say. But same as well, like you have templates, scripts, and styles. And that's why, like, coming from a backend, it was a lot easier. And what I noticed in the Warsaw Jazz meetup, people instantly, okay, I have to learn it, okay, instantly React, because there's where you have like higher proportion of job. But I see it a little bit not completely true, right? Because, for example, if Vue or Svelte, I noticed like Vue is getting more popular slowly. I think Svelte probably as well a little bit more.
Yeah.
But Vue side, I have this like good extension, Vaporizer. I don't know if you have it. Vaporizer is a really nice extension. If you like add it, you can go to any website and you can see what it's built on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the reason people choose React first and they invest all that time into learning React is because the big money is in React. So you know it's going to be alive in 10 years. You know it's going to be alive in 20 years, right? That's as much, as comfortable I am.
But if you didn't go through the JS fundamentals, you're
Yeah,
shooting your time with foot. But if you don't know JS good enough, stepping into Svelte or Vue, it's a lot more easier path.
Here's the fear I have when people like, because I have a friend who I motivated him to learning how to code, and first I like gave him what I used, right? The system that I used was like, you learn HTML, you learn CSS, you learn JavaScript. You learn JavaScript really well.
Who learns CSS? Now you have to tell me.
Right, but you still need to, like, that's the thing. So React, Tailwind is the same thing.
Yeah.
If you learn those first, you're learning an abstraction and a very, very, very specific type of code writing, right? Like JavaScript, they have this thing called JSX, right?
Yeah.
It looks like HTML, but it's not HTML. It's actually JavaScript. It's like all... Shut up, Siri. She knows what I'm talking about. So if you learn React, like you can learn React first without having to know anything else. But then you put yourself, like you lock yourself in a cage and you are unable to go anywhere, in my opinion, right? Because now you have learned this like UI-based design. You like are using hooks, which are abstracted classes, which are abstracted objects, which are abstracted, like, you see what I mean? It's like, the closer you are to learning the fundamental truth of what programming is, it's just statements and variables. You say, if this, that, if that, loops and variables. That's all it is. You learn that well, you're good. But if you try to skip ahead into the useful stuff, right? Like building websites and building real apps, then you really don't know what it is. You're just like, you're working in a vacuum. I don't know, that's probably a very long-winded explanation, but it's best to learn the fundamentals.
I think like now, what I reiterated before, you have a lot of these shillers. So like, oh, buy my course, 3 months, and you're gonna be a front-end developer. I have as well like a friend who paid like, I don't know, $1,000, and said like in 3 months you're gonna be like a full stack.
They paid a very small amount. You know, in the States it's like $25,000.
But it's BS, isn't it? Or?
Of course it's BS. You're not. So all of these the boot camps, at least in America, the way they work, the reason they ask for so much money is because they have the connections. They don't actually have the knowledge of what you need to do to be a real developer. They have the connections. So you go through their course. They teach you whatever their clients, you know, the teacher's clients need. So if they need somebody that can do SQL databases, they teach you just what the client needs, and then they connect you and the client. That's their real job. You're just like you're a product. As somebody that's trying to learn, that you're buying these courses and you're buying these boot camps. You're just a product.
Would you categorize it as a scam or not really?
I wouldn't say it's a scam because there's two kinds of people that it works for. One is people that are super like committed. They're like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to sit 12 hours a day and learn. And I'm going to go to these courses. And I'm going to meet these people. And they always end up with jobs. And then the second type of person is somebody who's a very like social guy or girl. Like they know how to talk. They get the connections. But if you're going in there and your goal is to make a lot of money in 1 year, like make $100,000+, right? You're fucked because you're not there for the code, and you're not there for the connections. You're there to make money. So those people are getting scammed. Everybody else, I think it's a valid way to go. It's useful. The connections especially. How hard was it for you to find your first client or your first job?
It wasn't easy, I would say, and that's what I delved into. And I can see, okay, other people had like more experience. I started relatively late, and I asked myself, okay, what can I do to put myself ahead? And then, okay, I write projects and I write blogs about it.
Yeah.
And actually, surprisingly, that as well helps a lot when you try to teach something. I try to teach something, or like, find the right words. Okay, that isn't just a variable, that's an object. Or like, what about mutation? Okay, my vocabulary in this sector, it sucks, like brutally honest, right? And that's why as well inclined me of getting books, because of getting more of the vocabulary in the technical sector.
Yeah.
Because I checked what others were writing and what I was writing. I'm like, okay, I'm I know, like a child or something.
Yeah, well, when you're learning a new language,
Yeah.
I'm learning Polish right now.
Yeah.
I am talking like a kindergarten kid, right?
Yeah.
Like I know how to like say like food, give me, right? I don't know how to make good, concise, meaningful sentences. I can string things together barely. I think it's the same with programming, because you are learning a language. You're reading and writing something, right? You're even talking about it. Like when you sit with your coworkers, you have to talk in that vocabulary. So when you start out, you're like a baby. You're like a super, super dumb baby. But 2 years in, now you have the verbiage, you have the experience of writing and reading code, and you can actually communicate effectively. But it's like you said, that's something that takes time. It's not something that you could just skip over.
Yeah, that's what when I got this LinkedIn, I got like relative pissed, to be honest, when promising 3 months. And nowadays a lot of these as well regarding investments, like I don't know, stocks, brokerage, crypto. A lot of these YouTube channels as well, like they're not genuine. And say I earned like 10k or something, 20, 30k. And actually that's not the case. They're earning by selling selling you something, right?
We call those multi-level marketing scams.
Yeah, but so many of those nowadays.
People want to have job security, and coding traditionally has been a place where you can get job security, right? You have really good average paychecks. Like you're making usually $100,000 plus if you're in the US. In every country, you're making enough to live very comfortably, right? So it's like everybody wants that, but not everybody wants to learn how to code. Yeah. Right?
But like what I see nowadays is regarding the coding side, a lot of people just want to code. I as well like talking about like a friend, like he's like doing data science, right? And I'm telling to him, okay, in my team everybody's a backend developer, that's why I'm an asset, because I know some front end, right?
That's the same with me. Yeah.
And as well saying, okay, like learning some DevOps or cloud, right? And my friends are like, oh, DevOps people, they're trash or something. I'm like, why do you say that? It doesn't always have to be code. In your example, how much is it essential to learn things apart from coding, like apart from front end? Aren't there a lot, like, with I don't know, CI/CD as well?
Extremely essential, because you don't want to be a one-trick pony, right?
But isn't it being omitted? I know this is being omitted. People just want to develop, and they don't want to learn. I know, like I did Jenkins as well before, but they don't want did GitHub Actions was quite fun.
GitHub Actions is like very important. I use it every day.
Yeah, I did it. It was AWS S3 bucket. It was really fun. Yeah. And for me, I think it was a little bit refreshing, because when you're always sitting in coding, like in front end or back end, then you have like certain kind of mentality. But when I did like DevOps or with cloud, it like, I know, more refreshing in a way.
You're learning about a new thing, right? I think to talk about, and by the way, if you're tired, we can always stop.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, so one of the, or I say the two things that I feel the most important for me to learn outside of front-end development is communication skills, soft skills, like super important. How to talk to people, how to listen to people, how to verify like you understand. So every time I'm talking to somebody and they say something to me, at the end of it I say, well, to recap what you just said, here, that you said this, this, and this, am I right, or did I understand it wrong? Like that's a skill that you need to learn. Another one is learning how to use supportive tools, like CI/CD is one of them, Webpack is another one, or like what are those called, like the static code helpers, like they check your code and tell you where you're doing something wrong. Like learning how to set these things up in your code base and your GitHub Actions. It's really
Git
important.
as well, obviously.
Git is like, oh my god, people don't understand how important Git is, and like Git, like creating branches and creating pull requests and managing GitHub, like that stuff is all like super important.
Did you use GitHub Desktop?
No, I use Git. It's Git. I've looked at GitHub Desktop. It looks pretty good, but I haven't had a point. There was never a point where I couldn't get something done with Git in the website, right? Like GitHub website. It's all is available. Do you use the GitHub app?
Like before I didn't. On my private computer I use just Git, but on work GitHub Desktop.
I had somebody try to make me learn GitLab. Have you heard of GitLab?
Yeah. GitLab.
I hate it. I hate it so much. Like
I heard they have really good CI/CD.
I think what they're good at is keeping your stuff private. Like if you don't want to have open source code, you use GitLab, right? Because most people use GitHub for open source, right? Like if you want to find code to use, you're not going to go on GitLab. You're going to go on GitHub. So GitLab is good for privacy. I think you might be right about the CI/CD stuff because I worked with some professionals that preferred it. But for me, the open source nature of GitHub, that's where I want to work. I want all my code to be visible for anybody to use. I don't want to have any private code, essentially. That's why I choose GitHub. What is your code editor?
I actually wanted to talk about it as well.
All right, well, let's talk about the code editor then.
I started with Python, then I went into VS Code. In my work, we use Golang for Go, and then I got again immersed into the idea of JetBrains, and now I'm using it a lot more.
I use VS Code. I've used VS Code for like 3 years. I started it off with the...
Did you try JetBrains or?
No, I didn't. There was one that starts with S. I don't remember what it was called.
What's S?
Yeah, it's paid though. So I started learning on that. But it was really hard to navigate. VS Code, I feel like so there's Visual Studio. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah. No. But it's for C languages, no? It's like for
so I used that when I was learning Rust. So when I'm learning Rust,
you did Rust?
Yeah.
Did you like it? Or?
I really like it. It's just so difficult because first it's all typed, so you have to have the types for everything, and then the language works on a different model. So there's no garbage collector. In JavaScript, you have the garbage collector, which manages your memory for you, which really simplifies things because you don't have to think about how many bytes am I using here? Should I use a 1 or 0 instead of true or false to save 4 bytes?
Doesn't it use as well on RAM? Doesn't it run on RAM? I heard something.
It does, but even if it does run on RAM, right? You can have things like infinite callback loops. Like you could overrun your memory very easily if you don't manage it correctly. What Rust does different than C, this is a very known problem in C, memory collection, like memory issues, memory leaks specifically. That's like the terms they use, like C, C++, C#. It's a huge issue for people. With Rust, it has a compiler that reads your code and tells you every single place where you're making a mistake or you're doing something that costs you too much memory. So you fix it, and it won't compile until you fix it. With JavaScript, it compiles.
With memory allocation?
Memory allocation. So it teaches you how to manage your memory without a garbage collector. That's Rust's special thing. JavaScript is you can literally put trash in your code base and it'll run, and then someday your client clicks a button the wrong way and everything falls apart and you lose millions of dollars, right? Because JavaScript it lets you get away with anything. You can write any kind of trash code and it'll still work. But Rust is not like that. So you have to write very clean, very nice code. And that takes time.
Definitely.
And when you work a full-time job, it's not very easy to spend 3 hours a day writing a to-do app for a month, right? You want to get things done quickly. Have you tried any other languages recently besides Go?
And besides Go, no, I wouldn't call TypeScript a language. Or
TypeScript?
It's like a superset. of JavaScript?
TypeScript is like a
Superset.
It is a superset. It is
Yeah.
well, maybe maybe I'm wrong with the term, but TypeScript just adds on top. It's like JavaScript but with types, and it's built so that you write your code in a way that doesn't put you through what we just talked about with you click a button wrong, or I don't know, for some reason your data mutates from a number to a string and everything falls apart. Your app is not usable anymore. So TypeScript is good for that.
Well, I tried Elm.
Elm? I've never heard of this. What is that? What is that?
It's like a functional based program.
I keep hearing about them, and like people think JavaScript is functional, but it's not. Like
No.
it pretends to be functional.
Is it like uses some kind of T approach? I cannot remember the abbreviations, but it has like a view, a model, and update, and you have to. It looks quite funky, like quite unpleasing, and it's just like because arguments of Elm is basically because TypeScript is not completely type safe. You have the any.
You have any, and you also have ts-ignore. Like that's my favorite line of code is ts-ignore. So like if something isn't working, I'll just like you add a comment and you add like an @ and ts-ignore, and it turns off TypeScript for the next line of code. And I have added this to so many code bases. I'm gonna get fired because of this. But no, sometimes you just want to get things done.
Yeah.
And TypeScript is really annoying because it's like, ugh.
Why don't you just use the any clause?
Because any still needs you to write good code. ts-ignore.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, like you relatively speaking, like if you use any, and let's say you have an array, right? Like you have an array of numbers. You could use any, but the original type is like an array, just an empty array. You typed it as an empty array. It won't work, even though it's like you used any, right? Because the initial typing that you used is an array and it's empty. So it's going to expect that array to constantly be empty because you didn't say what is supposed to be in it. So you use any, it's not going to work. So you have to use ts-ignore. That way you could push it into the array and you could still do stuff. This is too technical.
Yeah.
But it's actually very fun. I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation.
It's quite pleasing.
Is there anything that you can give advice to people who may be listening? A lot of people that listen to this are just now learning to code. And we touched on learning the fundamentals. We touched on also taking time. Is there anything else that you think people could use or share your experience?
Like the industry is getting more competitive, and what helped me personally is like making my name outside, like blogging, and started recently as well YouTube, right? A lot more people are stepping so you have to differentiate partially, I would say.
Yeah.
And as well, like I think a lot of people like don't really want to learn new things. At least in my industry, like everybody's a back-end developer, and the front end is just I don't know.
Everybody thinks that front end is not important. They think it's bad. They think it's bad, and I'm like, they think it's like dumb.
It's not dumb. I think it's just like balancing out. I even like we had to utilize telemetry. It's like for checking performance. For example, for queries, different kind of operations, right? And the repository was open. It's written like 60% Go, around 38 Vue, right? But you still have a balance. Where I work, like everything mainly is just in Go, and then it's like chaotic. It's like, I think it's tightly coupled. I think you have that terminology, right? And like I think front end is like quite essential, and you cannot have one without the other. I don't think you have like one shoe fits it all. And a lot of people assume, okay, I can write Go components or anything like that. Like a Rust component as well has it.
Yeah, they have like I think it was Y something yell. I don't remember.
You as well can make div or p tags.
Yeah, you can make HTML components and inject them into your Rust code, and it works, But at the same time, like I think people need to take more time into understanding that nowadays you don't even need a backend. You really don't. You can do everything on the front end. There's
with blockchain, you mean, or
everything. Like any company in the world, you don't need a backend anymore. You don't need a server. Everything can be done serverless. You have services like AWS that handle it for you. You have Firebase. Like, you don't have to write a single line of code.
But what about front end? You as well have WordPress. You have Wix.
Yeah,
you
that's definitely true.
It's like goes from both directions, actually.
I see that like with WordPress, since it's no code, it's way more limiting. So like, yes, you could do backend.
But isn't like Wix or Shopify?
Shopify, yeah.
I heard like people don't like it, but when I checked what like people built on it, I would say it's quite nice. Like on WordPress, I don't often see like good sites, but on Shopify, they're more.
I think my bias comes in from working with front-end JavaScript, Typescript for so long. But in my opinion, when you're still writing code, you have way more control over the machine, the browser, everything. You have the control, right? When you're using something like WordPress, you are restricted to building in a very, very, very specific way. And if you want to go outside of what WordPress gives you, you need to start editing PHP code, right? And yeah, so that like with WordPress specifically, there's other ones. There's Webflow. There's I like Webflow personally, but the limitations from those like front end the abstractions are way more difficult to deal with than when you have a front-end code base that's JavaScript, where you could write back-end components, front-end components, middleware. You could write APIs all in JavaScript. Next.js. So if you really want to do things like all front-end, you don't need any back-end at all. You have TypeScript, React, or Next.js. Next.js is better than React. And then you have like Firebase, let's say, or you have... there's this new database that lets you write things in JavaScript. It's like NoSQL database, so you could just write everything in JavaScript. You don't have to have a server anymore. You could just write your client-side code. It'll handle everything for you. You connect it to those backend as a service, and you're good. You're good to go.
But with Firebase, you cannot like make relationships as much.
That's why I prefer there's something called Unreal DB. So it's a JavaScript. It's a JavaScript framework for databases, and it's both NoSQL and SQL at the same time. So it has both options. It lets you write the code however you want, as long as you know how to retrieve the data that you wrote into the store or whatever. You're good. Like you could have one line that's SQL, and then the next line is NoSQL, and then you can store like an object somewhere and pull that back in. So front end, if you are trying to learn how to code, in my opinion, as a front end developer with my bias, all you need is to learn JavaScript or front end development in any way possible. Like you can do JavaScript, you can do PHP. It's enough for you to do whatever you want. If you want to learn back end, you are more valuable in very certain circumstances, but you're also way more restricted. Like if you're a back end developer, you do this one thing and you do it well, and that's it. That's your job, that's your life. With the front end, you could jump around so many different things, because nowadays there's like hundreds of ways to write back-end components with front-end JavaScript or front-end TypeScript stuff. Does that make sense?
It does.
Firebase. If you wanna build something cool, use Firebase. Super fast. There's also another one. It's an open source one called Supabase. So it's an SQL database with a node backend. So like the backend is already built for you.
It's the same as Pocketbase.
It's the same as Pocketbase, but it's I think Supabase is more like reliable for like bigger projects, right? Pocketbase like something small.
Yeah, but Pocketbase is built on Go.
And what is Go like?
It's amazing. I love it.
What do you love about it?
I like that it reminds me a little bit of TypeScript. It as well has you have like interfaces. It has like structs, right? Then you as well have you don't have like objects. Yeah, but as well I have like interface, but interface is used as an object. Like I did mainly Python, but like Go got me really intrigued the way it's being written, and as well you cannot declare something without using it. You cannot write a variable and just leave it hanging.
That's
there.
with Rust as well. So that's what makes me so attracted to Rust, is like how clean it forces you to be. My favorite like language visually is Python. It looks beautiful. Like the way it's written, the way it's indented, it's readable. Everything is like, you have your one page, you read it from top to bottom. There's no jumping around and going all crazy with like JavaScript. You have to import files from different, like you have to import data from different files, and you have to declare it, and like you jump around files like hundreds of times a day. But with Python, at least from my experience, like you write something like a simulation. We did a hackathon here in ETH Warsaw. We were building a game called The Game of Life, and we had this entire game written in one file of Python, and you read it from top to bottom. You know exactly what it does. It's extremely clean and readable. It's really
OOP?
nice.
With OOP, right? Or was it?
It was Python. I'm not sure if it it's
object oriented.
No,
like without classes.
No, it wasn't classes. It was
just
line
function.
to line, line to line.
Okay, just function.
Yeah,
okay.
just a function. Just that indentation. You don't need like semicolons and the oh my god, it's that stuff is very frustrating with JavaScript, right? Like you have to add an indentation here.
Python as well, actually, I think changed as of late. I think a lot of are now replicating TypeScript. Because now as well, like I'm reading about like a book about it and so forth, and I noticed like more online, everyone using like data classes. It's like similar concept where you define it. It's like string, integer, or boolean, or a float. It seems like this trend from TypeScript is like changing as well other languages, right? Trying to adapt partially.
Well,
to not lose users in a way.
The reason for that is it's just better. Like it's simply better. If you know I think the goal of TypeScript and Rust and Go is that you know exactly what your code is going to do. That's the point of it, right? With JavaScript, you don't know. If you're using plain JavaScript, you don't know. Like 99.99999% of the time, you add 1 plus 1, it's going to be 2. But sometimes it's 11. Right? You get what I mean? Like that uncertainty on large scale applications is not good, because all it takes is for one mistake to happen, or one have you ever had to deal with build issues? Like you have Vercel, and let's say you have another like S3 buckets, right? They build your code and then they host it. Sometimes some of them use different build types. Like sometimes they build with Yarn, or sometimes they build with NPM. And at the end, you have...
Who uses Yarn? I thought like mainly... Oh, you do?
I use Yarn. So NPM shows you all of the errors in your... Like you have 56 warnings and so many critical... I don't want to see it. Just keep it to yourself. I'd rather just use Yarn. It doesn't tell me anything. I like to live thinking my code is fine, because sometimes it's pointless with NPM. Like, okay, you install a project and you work on it, and you have critical vulnerabilities that there's nothing you could do about it, right? But the only thing you could do is use that package that you're using. So what do? Do you like scratch your head over it and get frustrated every time you see you have 3 critical vulnerabilities, or do you just like turn it off? I like turning it off, because at some point there's nothing you can do about it, and I feel like NPM is too frustrating with the fact that it tells you like there's all these issues that you can't solve. That was a productive conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Likewise.
Thank you for being on the podcast. I want to close this off by just saying, if you are learning to code and if you've made it through this 1 hour and 20 minutes of technical jargon, keep going and eventually it'll click. Is there anything you want to shout out? Do you have a blog or a website that we can add into the description?
I have a blog.
We'll add it into the description then.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for being on, and we'll see you in the next one, guys.
Okay.